This slideshow will walk you through reading Isaac Rosenberg's Returning, We Hear the Larks. Rosenberg is a little different from a lot of World War I poets in that he was from a very poor, working-class family. He's really self-educated as a poet, but he's well steeped in English poetic tradition. He was a painter, too, really a genius. So, as you know, what I do first when I read a poem is look at the whole thing. I look at the title, and then I read the poem aloud to myself. So I'm going to do that. Returning, we hear the larks. Somber the night is, and though we have our lives, we know what sinister threat lies there. Dragging these anguished limbs, we only know this poison-blasted track opens on our camp, on a little safe sleep. But hark! Joy! Joy! Strange joy! Lo! Heights of night ringing with unseen larks, music showering our upturned listening faces. Death could drop from the dark as easily as song, but song only dropped, like a blind man's dreams on the sand by dangerous tides, like a girl's dark hair, for she dreams no ruin lies there, or her kisses, where a serpent hides. Now I'm going to look for words I don't know, or words I do know, but that I think are going to be significant. One of those is obviously going to be larks. So larks are birds, and I knew that already, but I don't really know much about larks because they're not really American birds, they're English birds. They're songbirds, I think, because we're going to hear down here heights of night ringing with unseen larks. And it's a nice sound, I think, because we also see joy, joy, strange joy. So I look up larks, and I find that they're common meadow birds in England, and they have a beautiful song. It's a bird that often shows up in poetry, especially poetry that's about joy or love or any of the beautiful things that we think poetry is usually about. And that's good. Now I know something that I didn't know before that's going to help me understand this poem. And yet there's still a lot I don't understand. When I begin to read the poem again, returning, we don't know where we're returning from, just from somewhere. We don't know who we is either yet, but we know we're going to hear something beautiful because of the larks. The title itself then is suggestive, but a problem. The first line, somber the night is, has standard grammar, but it's not standard sentence order. Normally we'd say the night is somber. But here, the somberness is what shows up first in the sentence, and so that tells us that the somberness is really important in the poem. This is already a contrast to what we expect to hear from a poem about larks, which we know this is from the title. And going on to the next sentence, though we have our lives, what does that mean? Though we have our lives? That's strange. It suggests that we're lucky to have our lives. That's something the poet has to note, and he has to note it early in the poem. Why is that, I wonder? Oh, this is why, because we know what sinister threat lies there. So we know that there's something going on, a sinister threat that the poet knows about, and the poet is doomed under this terrible sense of fear. The poet has managed to get that in already in this little tiny short stanza. Moving on, I see that this next stanza seems to be really, really important. It explains something about this sinister threat that we've seen. Here we see them dragging these anguished limbs. Anguished is a really important word here. We don't know why the limbs are anguished yet, but we see next that we only know this poison-blasted track opens on our camp. All right, let's stop there for a minute and look at some of these things. As I'm looking at this line, I'm seeing that we have to drag these limbs, and we have to drag them to a camp. That tells us that this poem is in a military setting. Okay, we could have guessed that since we're reading World War I poems right now, but this tells us that within the poem. Now, how do we get to the camp? By dragging down the poison-blasted track. Why is it poison-blasted? Has it been gassed, maybe? Is it that the track is shelled nonstop? Because of the nature of trench warfare, the two armies know really clearly where the other guys are, where they walk, where they keep their horses. They know when it's dinner time on the other side. And what that means is that they can very easily keep a continual bombardment on the track you use to bring the food up from the rear where it's cooked. They know what times of day men are washing and shaving, and so that's a good time for a surprise attack. So what we've got in this stanza, we've got the image of these poor soldiers, already half dead, trying to drag themselves back to camp on a road full of danger, but danger about which they can hardly bring themselves to care. All they care about is this, a little safe sleep. They're exhausted, aren't they? They're completely worn out. They just want sleep. Are they going to get a lot of it? No. Are they going to get enough of it? No. But at least there's something to look forward to, a little tiny bit of safe sleep. Now here we get to the stanza that we looked at the very beginning. This is a stanza that jumped out at us the very first time we read the poem. It's got the larks in it again, and everything about it is unusual. So if we begin to look at what's going on, we'll see first some poetic language. Hark. Bow. Now, these are words that nobody uses in conversation. Maybe in Shakespeare's day they did, but even in Shakespeare's day, they weren't really going around harking and lowing all the time. So these are poetic words that make us stop and make us say, "Hi, I'm a poem." And if we think about it, we'll remember that this is a hallmark of modernism, the artwork that says, "Hi, I'm a painting, hi, I'm music, I'm whatever I am, and I'm operating according to known conventions of this particular field." So here we have these two poetic words that could have been used by Shakespeare or Keats or any other poet from an earlier century. And they're sort of marking this stanza as operating according to different rules from how the other stanzas in the poem have worked. The other thing you can note about them is that both hark and blow have exclamation points after them. See the exclamation points right there? An exclamation point is a really hard punctuation mark. So some punctuation marks, like a comma for instance, give you a little pause. And we all know that we use commas in a sentence if we want our reader to pause. A period is a pretty hard stop, right? In fact, it's called a full stop in England because it brings you to a full stop. If you get to the end of a sentence, like music showering our upturned listening faces, you stop, and that's a pretty hard stop. But an exclamation point is used to indicate excitement, joy, surprise, right? And so what happens is an even harder stop than you get with a period, even when, as here, the words are starting off the sentence they're a part of. So you get, "But hark," long pause. "Lo," long pause, before you go on to the next word. But there's even more than that going on in this first sentence. You have "but hark," strange word, exclamation point, "joy, dash, joy, dash, strange joy, period." Everything about this sentence is telling us, stop, turn around, listen. Joy is repeated twice by itself, and then we hear that it's strange joy, and we might well believe that it's strange, because there's not a lot of joy in the speaker's life right now. This is a sentence that keeps having these really strong stops in it. The poem was moving along pretty well. So here's the second stanza, for example. "Dragging these anguished limbs, we only know this poison-blasted track opens on our camp, on a little safe sleep." Now, the first two lines of that stanza are enjambed pretty strongly. There is a dash after camp, so we get a nice hard pause there, but it's nothing like the 1, 2, 3, 4 hard pauses we get in the first line of the next stanza. This has an effect on us as readers. It has a physical effect on our bodies as we're reading through the poem. Then in the next line, we get something a little bit longer. "Lo, heights of night ringing with unseen larks." Now, ringing is an unusual word to use about birdsong. It suggests echoing, a sound that rings off everywhere. The night is like a dome, a cathedral, something high, and all around this ceiling of the night is echoing this birdsong that he hears. Then he goes on to say, "music showering." Everyone's face is turned up to see, and the music is falling down on those lifted faces. We talked about the first line being broken up with all these pauses called caesuras. That's the poetic term. The second line has one caesura after lo, and then you've got this flowing rest of the sentence up to the period. So there's zero enjambment in this stanza, and that has not been true of either of the stanzas before. If you look at the first stanza, the first line ends with a strong period, but look at the second line, it starts with and. So it's making a connection between the sentences, even though there isn't any grammatical connection. And though we have our lives, comma, we know what sinister threat lies there. The and connects these ideas so that you get a lengthened expression there. But here, what we've got is stoppages. What do stoppages mean? It could mean my car is broken down and I can't go on, or it could mean stop and look at what's around you. And that is what it is here. I mean, here I am, everything was awful, and we were just looking forward to getting to bed and getting a little bit of safe sleep, and everything was miserable around us, and we barely got our lives, but then joy, right? Joy in the sound of a lark. You've got the most horrific place that a soldier has ever been, that a human being has ever been, and it's been transformed by this natural thing, the skylark singing. And now we can return again to the idea of showering that we've got right here. Death could drop from the dark as easily as song. So what do we have there? We have enjambment. It's all one phrase, one idea. It's broken up into two poetic lines, but it's all one thing. So the enjambment from the beginning of the poem is back. And this line is about something else that could shower us, something else that could drop from the dark, and that's death, and not song. In this poem, you have a lot of lines that start with what I'm sure your high school English teacher told you could never start a sentence with, a conjunction. But is the conjunction of reversal, but song only dropped. Song only, not death. Like a blind man's dreams on the sand by dangerous tides. This is an interesting image, isn't it? An image we want to think more about. What could that mean? What could that mean? A blind man's dreams on the sand by dangerous tides. I mean, you're lying on the beach, your eyes are closed. In this case, the man is blind, but it could also be a person lying with their eyes shut, and they can dream beautiful dreams. This is a dangerous thing to do, though, right? Because you're dreaming by dangerous tides, and it's not that you have your eyes shut, you're blind. You can't open your eyes to see if there's anything there. So there we are, all of us walking back on the poison track, and we've stopped, stock still, and our faces turned up toward the skylark singing its beautiful song. We have two more metaphors. One is the metaphor of the girl's dark hair, for she dreams no ruin lies there. Okay, well, I find this a little bit baffling. The song is dropping like the girl's dark hair, hair that she drops because she can't imagine any ruin will lie there. So you can think of a girl turning her hair upside down, a girl with long dark hair. Again, she's blinded by it. She doesn't know. She's exposing herself to danger by doing this. But it's also this gesture of luxuriousness. You know the way you might toss your hair forward over your head in the summer when it's hot, or after you've washed your hair. So this luxurious movement that you make, but something you only do if you think you're safe and nothing bad will happen. Now, this last line, or her kisses wear serpent hides, is picking up on a long tradition in English poetry where women are attractive but dangerous, and here the serpent is waiting inside the kiss. Inside the beautiful thing is danger and death. So if we look at this poem overall, we see we're in a bad place, rotten things are happening to us. In the middle of the bad place, something beautiful, something wonderful. And I think we'd really like to take that as, yeah, there's some redemption, because even in horror is beauty. But I think that redemption is turned back on itself, because the beautiful thing is also dangerous. There's danger in this beauty. This beauty makes us stop. This beauty makes us pause. This beauty makes us put ourselves in danger. Why do we do this? Are we stupid? No, because we need that beauty so much that we endanger ourselves to take it in. Why would we dream? Why would we dream on the sand? Because we need to do that. Why would we kiss when a serpent could hide there? Because sometimes we need that beauty. So this is a really beautiful poem. It's one of my favorite poems, in fact, and I hope you all like it too. But it's a poem that's really deep. It's got an obvious turn in it, but then it's got another, more subtle turn at the end that really complicates the situation of the speaker here, who's walking through all this danger, death, and war.